Something that we didn't talk about yesterday, and this is my fault. I'm not sure exactly how it is that we didn't have time to get to this yesterday. I'm curious what Jeremy has for us on this. But the Marlins and their dysfunction, Stugotz, Mel Stottlemyre Jr., by consensus, is a great pitching coach. Nobody disputes this. And the big lead, among others, is writing, while the Mets and Phillies ready for what should be a classic NLDS, their NL East rivals, in quotes, in Miami, continue to embarrass themselves. And Buster Olney writes, the more that you hear about the breadth of the firings within the Marlins organization, from coaches to clubhouse attendants, the more cold-blooded it looks. Clear-cutting people who devoted their care and working lives to this business just reeks of administrative failure. After winning the Manager of the Year, Skip Schumaker, and I know nobody nationally cares about this team, but it's a special level of dysfunction and decades of it. To have the Manager of the Year and have him go into a lame duck season, at least in part because you run your business so poorly, that now you're just running off all the coaches as well. And Billy, you're a Marlins fan. I don't know how you received yesterday, but nobody disputes that Stottlemyre is very good at his job, and nobody disputes that Schumaker is very good at his job. And so to run off the entire coaching staff as a business move, did it affect you?
Well, I think the Skip thing was different in that I think Skip spoke to them prior to the season, and they kind of came to this conclusion together, like, let's see how this goes. But it seemed like the writing was on the wall for Skip very early on.
Again, the God is writing on a Babylonian wall. Again, this is happening. The writing is on the wall for Skip Schumaker. But what about the rest of the coaches? This was it was a bit surprising that Stottlemyre was let go, no?
Him, yes, because he survived the previous managerial change because, as you were saying, he was viewed as one of the best pitching coaches in all of baseball. So, I mean, when there is new administrations coming in, they will bring in their new coaches. It's just interesting to see that they are not even giving the new administration the option of him or not. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what their plan is, but it was described, the day before as a bloodbath is coming. So it seemed inevitable that there was going to be mass changes. I just don't know. It's hard to see the direction right now.
Are you numb to it?
Somewhat, yeah. Like once you let the manager of the year, defending manager of the year, just kind of walk away, and then you get rid of the best pitching coach in baseball, who's had incredible success, by the way. Like he has a great resume of what he's done just down here. It's not like he's done this on other teams. He's done it here. He has a Cy Young to his credit, right? So yeah, let's see who they bring in, but it's not like what are they building around right now? You know what I mean? Like it's just another rebuild again.
Mel is one of the best pitching coaches in baseball. His father was as well, and the pitching staff has nothing but the most amazing things to say about him as he turned guys like Ryan Weathers and Jesus Luzardo from disappointments who were high draft picks and had great stuff into legitimately good starting pitchers. The question on Mel that I haven't heard answered yet in the reporting, and maybe I'll try to find those answers, is was this a situation where they let him walk because he wanted to, or they dismissed him? Because Mel had flirted with leaving before, and Skip essentially convinced him to stay. Now that this was going to be another manager, another group of coaches, did he want to leave? They have continued discussions with John Jay and Luis Urieta, who is going to be interviewed for the managerial position. Danny Alvarez reported that this morning. But, this is another
Tony, you like how he said
slate.
that, huh? You like how
Urieta, yeah, had chippa.
Jeremy,
Look, man, I'm capable.
It's important. Look, I used to love the newscasts when I would listen to and watch them on television, and all of a sudden one of the incredibly American-looking anchors said "Los Sandinistas" with a flourish. So I appreciate what Tony was appreciating there, which is you really went and got the Latin flavor.
Because he could have gone like Urieta. which would have been like
We've
like
been,
Jake Arrieta.
Well, we've been doing queso all week also around here.
Yeah,
so.
that's because Chris Cody's been the one pronouncing it, and that's how instead of saying queso, he says it queso. But Jeremy, what is the distinction you're making? To me, it's a damning indictment either way. Whether you're firing what is a good coaching staff for a young people team that needs a good coaching staff, or they're fleeing because they don't want to work for you anymore. Like, you're making a distinction as a correction, and both of them are pretty bad.
Not necessarily the rest of the coaching staff. This is just Mel Stottlemyre Jr. that I'm talking about, where, you know, he has enough respect within the organization that it's one of those things where, hey, look, if you want to go because we're getting rid of the rest of your coaching staff and you don't want to deal with a whole brand new group, feel free. Go find another program, another franchise that will appreciate what it is that you're doing. And I think that's a mistake. Like, one way or another, whether they fired him or whether they let him walk, they should have been begging to keep him. That's a major mistake. They did let go of the rest of these coaches. And it's shocking, but it's also, in some ways, unsurprising that you have a roster one season that makes the postseason, and the next season you lose 100 games, and the players weren't all that different. So it's not shocking that you'd be getting rid of the majority of the coaching staff, except the reality is that we all know that Skip Schumaker is a great manager, and several of those coaches are good coaches. Had they just not lost their entire starting staff and not gotten any level of replacements from the front office, this season wouldn't have been as desperate as it was.
It's my biggest pet peeve in pro sports when things aren't going quite right or as right as it did last year. It's like, you literally, I mean, these are the actions of someone who doesn't know what's wrong. They're like, we'll get rid of everybody. That way, everything, whatever the bad is, I don't know where it is, but it's not going to be here anymore because we got rid of everybody. But you're not really sitting there and say, wait, is he really part of the problem? No? All right, maybe we keep him. Maybe we keep him. Maybe we keep him. And like you guys said, maybe Skip Schumaker's like, I'm not going to be part of picking and choosing. Either you're riding with me and the people I select, or you're not. But there is this knee-jerk reaction that everyone's got to go. And I'm like, you didn't even identify what the issue was.
The core problem that this franchise has is that it's bad at the business of this. And so if the solve every time is we have to strip it down to nothing and tank in order to get the valuable draft picks that will fix it, you're playing a game a lot of other teams are playing, and you're playing it against teams that have money. So the Astros can make the playoffs 7 straight years after losing 100 games every season for 7 or 8 years. But if you keep having management turnover around that, none of these things are an actual solve or solution. It's not even a strategy. You can't get the business right, and therefore you can't get anything right.
I find this one particularly interesting because they hired a guy in Peter Bendix who's in his 30s, right? A young guy who has been told, hey, build it from the ground up. The issue was, hey, the minor league system is floundering with where it was left, and the major league team isn't quite good enough to be able to get by when that minor league system is so bad. So what does Peter Bendix do? He gets incredibly aggressive with trades throughout this entire season. He dismantles an entire roster that was in the postseason last year to build up a farm system and have not just the guys who are, 18, 19 years old who won't be here for years, but several 22, 23-year-olds, guys in AAA, guys who have already made it to the bigs, with the idea of you get a starting rotation back that's young, you add these guys, and you build from there. What he did throughout this season was clean house and start from scratch on the roster, and now he's doing it within the coaching staff to put in the guys he wants there. It's a question of, should Peter Bendix be given that level of power within this organization to build it all himself? You ask some people, they say, hey, he was part of the Rays. He had a philosophy. He wants to do that. You ask others, it's, hey, he hasn't proven anything to me yet, so why am I to believe this won't be just another Derek Jeter or somebody else?